well, new to this area, so I don't know if I'll be able to find any good twisty back roads, but pretty much we're going to talk a little bit about inclement weather driving, wet weather driving. I hope the audio comes through okay. My car's a little on the loud side, so I'll try to keep the windows up and hopefully that's okay. But yeah, I have some footage coming, and it's me driving in the wet for my first time ever in the rain, and it's definitely a different experience. I was on RE71 tires, which are glue in the dry, but in the wet, they're not really designed for that. But they're fine as long as you take it easy. Now, I've never driven on track in the rain. I've driven on the street in the rain. It's not the same. It's not the same thing at all. That's okay. We're going to talk a little bit about you know, what you should kind of do, what you should look for. We're going to avoid that rut in the road because that looks like it'll break your car. But yeah, so the big thing for me arriving, being scared, it's wet, oh, I can't accelerate, I can't stop, front wheel drive car, no corner grip, no nothing. And you know, it's pretty much good to assume you're not going to have any grip and to just go in there expecting basically driving on snow or ice or whatever the case. That just gets you in the right mindset to be cautious, brake early, you know, power late, don't lean on the tires the same way you would in the dry. Because it's just, you're not going to get the same grip. You're not. So you've got to be careful, you know, when you first head out there, especially if it's your first time. We're in Canada. Rain is inevitable. It happens all the time. Now, this summer, we had the driest summer probably ever. We had the best weather. I loved it. Despite the pandemic going on, the weather was phenomenal. And I still managed to somehow hit a wet track day. I showed up, it was August 29th, and it was pouring all morning. I got there and it was foggy and the track was damp. The whole first half of the day was just wet. It was either dry, pouring rain, or it was just overcast and the track was starting to dry, so you had changing conditions throughout the day. Then in the afternoon, we had the best weather. The sun came out and it started to dry up and warm up, and I was able to really put down some flyers, but that's not the point. The point is learning about wet weather driving in the rain. So pretty much what I want to say on that is you've got the dry line and the wet line. The dry line is the line that everybody takes all the time when it's dry. That's where the rubber's laid down, and that's where people, you know, they brake in the same spots, they accelerate in the same spots, cornering in the same spots. The line is there, and you've got all the rubber laid down on the dry line from all the cars driving it over and over and over and over. And what happens when it's dry out, rubber and rubber contact grips pretty well. You're going to make a lot of grip, rubber on rubber. Now what happens when you wet the rubber? What happens when you wet the rubber and you try to stick rubber to it? Well, it's like walking on ice. It's pretty much ice. Instantly, no grip. So if you try to use the dry line in the wet, you're going to have a horrible time. Terrible, terrible, terrible. The big thing is finding the wet line, which is any part of the track that isn't commonly driven on. I know that it's odd to say that, but yeah, you pretty much are driving offline the entire time. And it's a little bit kind of tricky and trippy, but it works.
Your tires won't get the temperature either.
No, not even close, not in this.
Even in the rain, you can get some good lap times if you get tire pressure and temperature up, and it's really hard to do because it's so slippery.
And you need to be kind of aggressive to do it, right?
But you also need to avoid spinning while you're making the... This one you kind of stay on the line, or this one come off the line a little.
No, more on the inside for the up into the ear. Brakes. This one's tough because it's slippery even in the dry.
Yeah, even I'm not good with the rain as much as I am in the dry. I've almost never done instructing in the rain.
Even if we floor it right now, we'll probably spin the tires.
We'll stay.
This is the tricky shit. So stay in.
Brake.
Brake, brake, brake.
More grip. More grip. Now gentle. Smooth transition. Smooth transition. Good, 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 good. Oh, then I have to slow down again.
You gotta slow down a lot here, I forget. Woo! Slippery.
Yeah. The curbs are gonna be slippery.
Yeah, wow, because they're concrete, I guess, right? Okay, so far out here, let's practice. Little bit of trail, and then we're aiming, I guess I was a little wide there.
Well, the wet line is
And
probably
then
there, or roughly.
more here.
That would have been the dry line pretty good.
Brake early. This is going to be the slick part, which there's not much we can do. Oh yeah, wow. Like ice. I just feel the front get light.
Yep.
Front's light there too, because that's the line.
Yep.
And the difference between wet line driving and driving on the dry line in the rain, it's night and day. It's the difference between hitting dry pavement and hitting black ice. All of a sudden the grip's just not there, and that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. But hold on and hope for the best, pretty much. And it's pretty easy. You can kind of see where the dry line is because it'll typically be darker. The pavement will be darker there from all the rubber that's been laid down over the over the years, whatever. And the wet line will just be regular pavement, but wet, of course, obviously. And so when you're driving, you can use visual representations like the change in the color of the pavement to decide where the dry line is or the wet line is, whatever the case. So with that said, the next point I kind of want to touch on here is visual markers. So your brake points, move them up. Even if you're on the wet line, you've got to move up the brake markers because you're not going to make it. I don't care what kind of pads you have, you're not going to stop the same way you will in the dry because it's a tire limitation at that point. It has nothing to do with your brakes. Pavement drops off. I don't like that. It's still all right. You got to be real careful with your brake inputs. You got to brake super early, super gently, because you're going to get into ABS way, 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 way sooner than you ever would have in the dry. And that can throw people off. Oh, I'm used to braking here, or I'm used to braking here, or carrying this amount of speed through this corner, and you can't do it. You can't do it in the wet. The other big thing that stands out even more in the wet than it will ever in the dry is being smooth inputs, slow inputs. You might be able to aggressively trail brake into a corner, or late brake, just hop on the brakes at the last minute and bleed the speed off towards the apex. In the wet, you're not going to be able to get away with that. I tried. You've seen the footage, I'm sure. It didn't work at all. And you're gonna spin, you're gonna blow the corner, whatever. It's gonna suck. And then oh my god! Holy shit! In the rain, when you slide a lot more. So just keep that in mind. So the big thing there that I pretty much am trying to get across to you is you have to be smooth with the turn, and smoother the better, essentially. You don't want to upset the car. You don't want any jarring movements. You don't want anything that's going to cause the car to change direction quickly. You don't want to hop on the brakes, hop on the power, none of that. You just want to be smooth.
Anywhere you're on the line is going to be more slick.
Woo!
There's going to be where it's slick.
You're right, wow. Okay, so more kind of stay out about a car, you said, right? Oh my god. Alright, I need some Continental wet slicks, that's what we need. Forget about
So
dry
you haven't
slicks.
crashed at higher speed.
Huh?
Slicks just means to crash at higher speed.
You're right, and that's not good for learning. Alright, so I'm going to stay kind of further out, like kind of off the line there. Into here. And then some downhill braking, but very light so we don't shock the tires, because, oh my god. Hard throttle, true line, brake, brake, brake.
You're going to cross onto it. Do you feel how you lost grip when you crossed onto it?
Literally, instantly.
Yep. I'm telling you, man. You got to stay off that line when you can, and then only use it when it's like a sharp corner or something where it's so tight you can't use another line.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, this track gets...
So like stay wide and then...
Oh my god, nope. Yeah. No grip there to give it any sort of power. Oh, yeah,
you might call it. You watch him slapping.
He looks like he's a little bit unhappy standing out there in the rain.
He's here every day, rain or shine, pretty much.
Knowing the difference between the line, dry line, wet line, whatever the case, it impacts lap time significantly. The track day that I was at, the footage you're going to see, it consisted more or less exclusively of GTIs and Golf Rs. So newer cars with more tech. Golf R is all-wheel drive, so I mean, it's got that rooting for it. And it doesn't matter. None of that matters if you don't know the wet line, because you're going to be spinning trying to leave the corner. Even if you've got an all-wheel drive system, it's going to be hanging on for dear life. If you're front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, you've got pretty much no chance trying to leave a corner with any urgency in the wet. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I learned the wet line. I was smooth. I was slow. My thoughts were slow. My inputs were slow. My actions and reactions were slow and smooth. Can't just jump on the brake like I could in the dry, and couldn't turn in, couldn't trail brake. There's a lot of things I couldn't do. And as the conditions change, dry, wet, you kind of got to use your judgment. Okay, is the dry line drier than the wet line? Because if it is, I'm going to take the dry line. As you know, as things dry up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump on back to the dry line. And that just comes with knowing the track and just using, again, visual indicators, looking and seeing if the pavement is drier on the dry line and the wet line is soaked. Go ahead and proceed by trying the dry line. And that's pretty much it. That's all I really wanted to touch on. I've only done one wet lapping day, and I had my friend Drew Falcon. He was there, and he was my instructor, and he basically transformed it for me, because prior to this I was terrified of wet track driving. It was my biggest fear. Oh, I prepaid for the track day, now it's pouring rain, maybe I won't even go. No, that's stupid. Go, just take it easy, try and learn the wet line. Either ask somebody who's been there before, try and get an instructor in the car with you. If you have a friend who's driven the track and they just know the dry line, the wet line's pretty much, you know, kind of the opposite, more or less. And there's a few places where you have to sacrifice and you have to take the dry line, because that's the corner. And in those cases, just know you're gonna have 50, 60, 70% less grip. If you're running around on wet slicks, which are a thing, wet racing tires, you know, you might not be as bad off, but 99.9% of people, especially anybody watching this video, they're running around on 200 treadwear, R comps, or maybe just all-season tires, regular summer performance tires, which are decent. They're decent in the wet. I mean, RS4, RA71, AO52, like any of those really, you know, cheater 200 treadwear tires, they're gonna suck in the wet rain. There's nothing you can do about it. They're not great. The RS4s actually I found a little worse, because they're a harder compound and the rain really helps keep the tire cool. So if you're unable to get it up to operating temp, you're unable to get heat into it, it's not going to work very well. And the RS4 is a prime example of that. It's absolutely horrible in the rain. The RE71 being a little softer, that helped for sure. It's easier to get heat into them. But that's another big thing you got to consider when rain driving is you're not going to have as much wear on your tires and your brake pads. I was very surprised after that track day that my tires, they looked like they took almost no wear. My brake pads looked like they moved a little, but not much, just because you can't brake at the same limits. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for my little spiel on wet track driving, rain driving, however we want to call it. But yeah, that's it. If I can think of anything else, I'll add it in, but I think I kind of got it covered for a basic introductory. Just key points that you really want to remember are wet line. Stay on it, learn it, figure it out, find it, ask someone to point it out to you, whatever. You want to be on the wet line. It's that simple. Smooth, slow, gentle inputs. Huge. That's maybe above wet line, actually, because even if you end up on the dry line and you're using your inputs nice, smooth, controlled, you're going to be just fine. Wow, where have we found? Got a little understeery there because the tires have no heat in them. Woo! And it's little sprinkly out here. But yeah, I guess most people probably aren't used to seeing this view of my car, since videos always come in windshield, but yeah, this is the cockpit here. This is where the command center, this is where I operate the machine. Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this nice road, kind of see where it goes, and yeah, I see there's another turn up ahead, so start getting a little bit ready for that. Really is outstanding how poor tires perform when they're not in their optimal temperature range. I mean, I was barely moving around that corner back there, and it was still aggressive enough to the point where the front end did not want to bite at all. Now, that corner was also tighter than anticipated, and it was decreasing radius, but it was okay. See where this goes, but I'm going to cut it off here. Thanks.